Rabbi Belsky left off the discussion about the kidneys as an aside. As you mentioned, the kidneys are over here. There are two kidneys on each side, and occasionally, even though at the slaughterhouses they do try to remove completely the kidneys from the cavity of the bird, but occasionally they fail to do so, and the kidneys remain inside, are part of it. So the question arises, if that is considered a complete salting, since we're required to salt in order to remove the blood, and we're required to salt on all sides, the top and the bottom, but if the kidneys are in its place, the question is it considered that the kidneys are blocking the salt from getting underneath it or not? That is the question. So the answer to that is, if the kidneys are in the original position in which the bird was born with, so then it's not a problem. As long as they remain in the original state that they were always in, so then it's not a problem. That's considered malicha from both tzodim, from both sides, and it's not a problem. However, if the kidneys were moved from the original state that they were, and there is either pieces or even especially the whole kidney that's been moved to a different position than it was originally in, then it could be a problem, dependent upon how large the piece of kidney is. If it's very small, then it's not a problem. It does not block the salting process. However, it's a piece that would normally be eaten as a piece of meat, so then it might be considered that the salt that was on top of the kidney never reached underneath the kidney, never got to that place, and therefore that would render it a malicha mitzad echad. So on a rare occasion, if somebody might have this shaila, so then they might have to go ask a Rav. There's one other item here, this is the heart. The heart most people do not eat. I believe the Sephardim do eat it. It's one of those things that is kosher l'shikha. So women can eat it technically, and I believe the Sephardim are noig to eat it. However, the problem might arise if you do find a heart in the cavity, and if you find it stuck in there, and therefore it was salted. So the halacha here would be, even though there's blood inside the cavity, and it was salted together with the chicken, on rare occasions it's possible to find that. Nevertheless, the bird is still kosher, because the blood that's in there would be bottled. Would be bottled to the rest of the bird. You have the cavity of the bird with everything else that's here, and therefore whatever blood which is inside this heart, it would be considered bottled. And technically the heart itself would also be kosher, but what you'd have to do, you'd have to open it up and spill out the blood and wash it out afterwards, because the blood of the heart is inside. It's full of blood in there. So that's what you'd have to do. However, certainly one should, if a housewife especially, if you notice the heart there, before you're going to cook it, make sure you remove it. And if you want to use that heart, so you have to cut it open, remove the blood, wash it out, and then you can cook it as it is. that is the inside of the cavity. That's pertaining to those issues. Just one other issue I'd like to mention, which is when it comes to the some broken bones. There are times when broken bones can be a problem, and especially with this part, which is the drumstick. As we mentioned before about the tzomis hagidin, those tendons that start at the bottom of this part of the drumstick and go up. So if the break was down where the tzomis hagidin are, if it's in that area, so then if it is discernible that break was not after the shechita, but rather before the shechita, and many times you can tell that if there is a lot of clotted blood, if it's blackish, and that would be or it's a deep brown, which would indicate that this was prior to the shechita. So then there might have been, through the break, the gidin, the tendons might have been broken also prior to the shechita. So if that happened, of course, so then the bird would not be able to be used. It would be non-kosher. So one should be aware of that also. Most of the breaks and bones that we do find, however, either happen in the butcher shop or even at the plant. And usually that's the blood. If you see a pinkish color, it might be blood, a pinkish blood, which is an indication that it occurred after the shechita, or it's what's merech, it's what leaked out of the bones, and it's not blood at all. The only time you would have a problem is if the blood is very, very dark, or a deep brown sort of. It's you see the blood is clotted, so that would be sort of a clear indication that this occurred prior to the shechita, and that's when there might be a problem.
Tell us in 1 minute's worth, what kind of problems would a housewife find in regard to something wrong being with the chicken? Overwhelmingly, you and Rav Belsky explained it's all checked and dealt with at the Schlachthus. So what can happen at home?
At home, as I mentioned before, with the kidney, which sometimes might be left, or there's another piece. You can have a lung occasionally, rarely, but occasionally it can occur. Or if the heart was there, which would also be blocking the salt from going underneath. So then it's only the part that's underneath those parts of the bird, which might be considered not being salted, and therefore they those parts, the meat underneath that should be removed. Whatever's underneath that should be removed. What's called kidei klipa. That's how much should be removed. Of course, the kidneys, which if they're in, it's on a bone, so there's no meat there to actually remove. However, the kidneys should be removed and discarded at that point. Although the heart also certainly should be removed and cut open if you want to use it, and the blood should be taken out, should be spilled out and washed, and then you can cook it. The other issues are, as although there's very strict hashgacha in all these slaughterhouses, nevertheless a person can err. It's mass production, and there are literally thousands and thousands of chickens that pass by the mashgichim daily, and therefore once in a while, rarely, things can get by. The most problems that do occur would be probably with buke da'atma. There are times when once in a while you might notice as we mentioned before, buke da'atma in this video, where the places, occasionally you might find when you open up a chicken that in this area, you've seen the other place, if there's a lot of blood, especially blood, dark blood, which would be indication that this occurred before the shechita, and if this is pulled out of its socket and it's hanging that way and there's a lot of blood, so then that would be a real shiloh. But that's basically virtually the only real shilohs that come about after the shechita. Very rare, but it can occur. Broken bones, as I mentioned, that usually we can say that happened at the butcher shop, it happened at the plant, and that's usually not a problem at all. But the problem would be the bukid atma, and also very rarely a tzaimas hagidin. Sometimes you see a swollen drumstick near the bottom. It could be swollen, it could be greenish, and that would be an indication of rot there. And therefore that has to be brought to a Rav, and that he should check it, that the rot did not reach to those tendons. If the rot did not reach the tendons, then the bird is kosher. If they reach the tendons, or if there's a lot of dark blood, then he probably would paskin that the bird is not kosher.